So the topic for today is spherical lenses. So most of us are familiar what are lenses. As magnifying glass, lenses have been in use for centuries. From our childhood, we are been using magnifying glass. That is nothing but a lens. The lenses are used in the spectacle so that we can read easily with comfort. Various optical instruments such as camera, telescope, projectors, microscopes, etc. uses lenses. Okay, and obviously they cannot function without lenses. So a lens is a piece of refracting medium bounded by two surfaces, at least one of which is curved surface. So this becomes the definition of a spherical lens. So the commonly used lenses are the spherical lenses. These lenses have either both the surfaces spherical or one surface spherical and the other one will be plane. So the lenses can be divided into two categories. So the first category is convex lenses, which is also called as converging lenses, and the second one is concave lens, which is also called as diverging lens. So these are the two types of lenses. So let us see what is a convex lens on a converging lens. So this lens is thicker at the center than at the edges. So basically this lens looks something like this. It is going to be thicker at the center and thinner at the edges as compared to the center. Okay, so this is going to be the shape of a convex or a converging lens. It converges a parallel beam of light on refraction through it. So if you want to draw the rays over here, if we draw the rays over here, so this rays which come over here like this, okay, we'll look at this in detail. Okay, after refraction these rays are going to pass through a common focus, okay, so through a single point on the principal axis, something like this. Okay, so basically this convex lens or a converging lens we call it, it is going to converge all the parallel beam of lights uh, after refraction through it at a single point. So this lens has a real focus. This is going to have a real focus. Convex lens is going to have a real focus. Okay, there are different types of convex lenses. So the first one is double convex or biconvex lens. First one we have is double convex or biconvex lens. Okay, so how does it look like? The one which I have drawn right now here, okay, is a biconvex lens or a double convex lens. So here in this lens both the surfaces are convex, if you see. The second type of convex lens is plano-convex lens. Okay, so in this case one of the surface is convex and the other one is plane, so it will be something like this. This is going to be plane surface, one plane surface and one convex surface, something like this. And the third one is concavo-convex lens. Okay, in this case one side is convex and the other one is concave, so it is going to look something like this. So this surface is convex and this one is concave. So these are the three types of convex or converging lenses. Coming to diverging lens or concave lens, second type, broad classification, concave or diverging lens. So this type of lenses are thinner at the center as compared to the edges. So it is going to look something like this. Both the surfaces are concave over here. So this is going to diverge a parallel beam of light. So if there is one beam which is coming like this, beam of light is coming like this. Okay, it is going to diverge this beam of light. Okay. Something like this. Okay. So if you produce these lines behind, they are going to meet at a single point, and that is going to be something like this. Okay. This is going to meet at a single point. Something like this. Okay, which is going to be a virtual focus. This is going to have, that is the concave or diverging lens is going to have a virtual focus, and it diverges the parallel beam of light on refraction through it. There are three types of concave lenses again. The first one is a double concave lens. Okay, which is also called as biconcave. Okay, the one which I had just now drawn, this is your double concave lens or biconcave lens. The second type is plano concave. Plano concave, so one surface is going to be plane, one is going to be a concave surface. And the third one is convexo concave. So the first surface on one side, it is going to be convex, and the other one will be concave. So this is going to be convex and the other one is going to be concave, something like this. This is going to be the third type of concave or diverging lens. Now let us look at some important definition in connection with the spherical lenses. So the first definition which we need to know over here for a spherical lens is what is center of curvature. What is center of curvature? So basically, if I have the two lenses, I'll draw both the concave lens as well as the convex lens. So this is my concave lens, a biconcave lens, and this one, top one, is biconvex lens. We draw principal axes. Okay, so the center of curvature of the surface of the lens is the center of the sphere of which it forms a part. That means, supposing this is one of the face, there are two convex faces over here, right? So if this is one of the face, okay, the center of curvature of this surface is going to be, there will be the entire circle this side, right? It is going to be the entire spherical sphere over here. Okay, this is a sphere over here. So center of this is going to be your center of curvature, that is C. Okay, similarly this side, it is going to be another sphere, something like this. That surface is going to be part of another sphere. So this one center is going to be the second center of curvature. So this is first center of curvature, this is second center of curvature. In this case also, this is going to be one sphere like this, and this is going to be another sphere. So this is going to be your first center of curvature, this is going to be your second center of curvature in case of a biconcave lens. So the center of curvature of the surface, this is one of the surface, center of curvature of this surface of the lens is the center of the sphere. This is the center of this entire sphere of which it forms a part. This surface forms a part of. Because the lens has two surfaces, it is going to have two center of curvatures. If you notice, in both the cases we have two center of curvature. The second definition which we need to know over here is radius of curvature. So the radius of curvature of the surface of the lens is the radius of the sphere of which the surface forms a part. So if I join this line over here like this, okay, or this line over here, these are radiuses. Okay, again supposing I join this line, or if I join this line, these are all radiuses. Okay, so this becomes the radius of curvature. So this is going to be R1, R2, again two radii of curvature. This is going to be R1 from here to here. This is going to be R2, again two radii of curvature. Next is the principal axis. So what is the principal axis? It is the line passing through the two center of curvature. The white line which I have drawn over here originally, the line which is passing through two center of curvature in both the cases, this line, okay, is called as the principal axis. So this becomes principal axis. Okay, in this case over here. Fourth point is optical center. Fourth point is optical center. So what do you understand by an optical center is, supposing I have a lens. So let me draw a lens over here. Okay, so supposing I have a lens, and let me draw a principal axis also, because I will require to define the optical center. So supposing there is a ray of light is made incident on the lens. Okay, so I make a ray of light incident on the lens. Let's say like this here. Okay, I make a ray of light incident on the surface of the lens. After refraction through the lens, the emergent ray is parallel to the incident ray. Okay, so the emergent ray which is going to come out of this lens, let's say it is parallel to this incident ray, exactly parallel to, now this is my incident ray and this is my emergent ray. So emergent ray and incident ray both are parallel to each other. Then the point at which the refracted ray intersect the principal axis. So where is the refracted ray now? Refracted ray will be somewhere over here in between, like this. This is going to be my direction of refracted ray. So the point at which this refracted ray intersects the principal axis, that is this point, is going to be the optical center of the lens. This is going to be your optical center. This is going to be the optical center. Now optical center O of the lens is given by the ratio of the thickness of the lens, or it is or it divides the thickness of the lens into the ratio of the radii of curvature of the two surfaces. Like for example, supposing this point is O, that is optical center, this point is O. Let's say this is P2, this point over here is P1, it is point on principal axis. Okay, this one's, let's say curvature, this side curvature, center of curvature is C1. This one's center of curvature, this side is C2. This surface center of curvature is C2. Then it is going to divide the thickness of the lens. This is the thickness of the lens from here to here. So it is going to divide this thickness of the lens. This optical center is going to divide this thickness of the lens, that is OP1 upon OP2. If I take the ratio of this distance to this distance. Okay, it is given by the ratio of the radii of curvature of the two surfaces, that is it is going to be P1 C1, that is from here to here, the radius from here to here R1, divided by P2 C2, that is from here to here, that is R2. It is going to be R1 upon R2. So the thickness with which the ratio in which this thickness of the lens is divided by the optical center is given by the ratio of the radii of curvature of this particular lens. Okay, so for the ray which is passing through the optical center, the incident and the emergent ray are parallel, as I told you. This ray over here and this ray is going to be parallel to each other. However, the emergent ray suffers little bit of lateral displacement relative to incident ray. There will be, it won't be exactly in one line, there will be some lateral displacement. That is, if you produce this behind, if you produce this ray behind, there will be this lateral displacement between the two rays, okay, which is going to decrease with the decrease in thickness of the lens. As you decrease the thickness of the lens, the lateral displacement between the incident ray and the emergent ray is going to decrease. Hence, the ray passing through the optical center of the thin lens would not suffer that much lateral deviation. Okay, it would be straight away passing. So, if the radii of curvature of the two surfaces, you can make out from this ratio, if the radii of curvature of the two surfaces is same, that means this optical center is going to divide this thickness of the lens into exact half. Okay, so if the radii of the curvature of the two surfaces are equal, that is R1 is equal to R2, and in that case this O will be exactly at the center, that is the geometric center of the lens. So if this is, I'll draw another lens over here. So if this is my lens and if R1 is equal to R2, then the optical center will be exactly coinciding with the geometric center, exact half. This distance will be equal to this distance. Okay, that has to be noted down over here. The next point we have is principal foci or focal length. Fifth one. End focal length, sorry. Okay, so in case of lenses, there will be two principal focus or two principal foci. Okay, one is the first principal focus we call it, and the second one is the second principal focus we call. Okay, so what do you mean by the first principal focus? What do we mean by the first principal focus? So first principal focus is the fixed point on the principal axis such that the rays starting from this point or appearing to go outward from this point after refraction through the lens become parallel to the principal axis. This is the definition. So I'll explain this using a ray diagram. So supposing I have a convex lens and I have a concave lens, biconvex lens to be specific and biconcave lens to be specific, and supposing the rays are starting from a single point on this principal axis. So let us say that this is my single point on the principal axis, and from here my rays emerge out, okay, like this. And after refraction they come out parallel to the principal axis in case of a converging lens. Okay, so they moved out like this and they came out parallel to the principal axis. Or in case of biconcave lens, they are appearing to go outwards from this point. So if I consider a point over here, okay, they would be appearing to come out from this point. So let's say that they are coming. So let me draw the dotted line over here first. Like this. So something like this, and then after refraction they will go parallel to the principal axis, exactly parallel. So ray detection. refraction would be something like this. Okay, so this point, this particular point, in case of a biconvex lens, and this particular point in case of a biconcave lens, that is the fixed point on the principal axis, such that the rays starting from this point or appearing to go outwards or towards this point or appearing to go towards this point, okay, after refraction through the lens go parallel to the principal axis. So this point is called as the first principal focus. Okay, this point is going to be called as the first principal focus, which is either denoted by F1 or it is denoted by F dash. It is denoted by F dash. Okay, so this is the point which is called as the first principal focus. The plane passing through this point, which is going to be perpendicular to the principal axis. So if I draw a plane over here which is perpendicular to the principal axis, which is passing through this point like this. Okay, this plane will be called as the first focal plane. This is called as the first focal plane, and obviously the distance from the principal focus and the optical center. Okay, the distance between the principal focus and the optical center, exact center over here. Okay, center to the focus will be called as the first focal length of the lens, okay, which is denoted by either small f1 or it is denoted by small f dash. For focus it is capital F, for focal length it is small f. It might be f1 or f dash. Okay, so this is about the first principal focus. Coming to the second principal focus. Okay, so let me draw the lenses first. Okay, so this is biconvex lens, biconcave lens. So it is a fixed point on the principal axis. So let me fix a point on the principal axis. Let's say F. This is now second principal focus we are talking about. Okay, it is a fixed point on the principal axis such that the light rays incident parallel to the principal axis. So if I make light rays parallelly incident on the lens, so what would happen in case of a convex lens? After refraction through the lens, they will converge to a single point. To this particular point they will converge. Something like this. Okay, so direction is going to be this. And in case of a concave lens, they will appear to diverge from this particular point. That means if you produce this, they are going to appear to diverge from this second focal point or focus. Okay, something like this. So it's going to be something like this. Okay, so what is the second principal focus? It is the fixed point on the principal axis such that the light rays incident parallel to the principal axis after refraction through this lens either going to converge, that is in case of a convex lens, or it is appearing to diverge, that is in case of a concave lens. So the plane passing through this point and perpendicular to the principal axis will be called as the focal plane, that is a plane like this which is perpendicular to the principal axis, something like this. This is called as the focal plane, and the distance between the principal focus and the optical center will be called as the focal length. This is going to be the focal length, it is second focal length. Okay. So it is denoted by f2, okay, or simple f, okay, and focus is denoted by capital F or f2, okay, capital F2. Okay, generally we use capital F only. So generally the focal length of the lens refers to its second focal length. So whenever we refer to a focal length of a lens, we refer to its second focal length. That is why we do not use this 2, we just say F for the focus. Okay, for the first principal focus we use f1, okay, or f dash, okay, but we do not consider it. Whenever we say focus of a lens, we just consider the second principal focus, and that is why it is taken as capital F. It is obvious from the above figures that the foci of the convex lens are real. So in both the cases, if you have seen the foci of the convex lenses, here if you see, the rays are actually converging at that point. So it is going to have a real focus, and in case of a concave lens, it is going to have a virtual focus. The rays are appearing to diverge from there, from that particular point. Okay, so concave lens is going to have a virtual focus. The focal length of the convex lens will be taken as positive. We will understand this when we do the sign convention. And the focal length of a concave lens is taken as negative, okay, because it is opposite to the direction of incident light. Okay, always remember, whenever we say focal length of a lens, we have to consider the second focal length. Whenever we say the focus of a lens, we have to consider the second principal focus. Okay, and the last term we need to know over here is aperture of the lens. Okay, it is the 6th point, aperture. Okay, so aperture is nothing but same as for the mirror, it is the diameter of a circular boundary of the lens. That is the aperture. Diameter of the circular boundary of the lens, it is this, is going to be your aperture of the lens. Let us see new Cartesian sign convention for spherical lenses. So the first sign convention is that all the distances are measured from the optical center of the lens. So if I have optical center over here, exactly at the center, okay, and all the distances are going to be measured from this optical center, this side or this side. Okay, that is the first sign convention. The second sign convention is that the distances measured in the same direction of incident light are taken as positive. So obviously the object will be kept on this side, so incident rays will be coming in this direction from left to right. So all the distances in this direction will be taken as positive. Okay, the third point is the distance is measured in the direction opposite to the direction of incident light. So direction of incident light is from left to right. So if you go opposite to the direction of incident light, that is from right to left, all the distances will be taken as negative. This is going to be a negative distance. Heights measured and which are upwards and perpendicular to the principal axis are taken as positive. So all the heights upwards will be taken as positive, and the heights which are taken downwards, perpendicular downwards, will be taken as negative. So these are the sign conventions for spherical lenses. So now there are numerous consequences which can be drawn from this sign convention. So let us see consequences of sign convention. So the first consequence is that the focal length of a converging lens is positive and that of a diverging lens is going to be negative. Okay, so focal length for converging lens, that is a convex lens, will be positive, and focal length for diverging lens will be negative. So if you have seen, I told you generally we consider second focus. So second focal length will be this side. This is going to be your f for a converging lens, and this is going to be your f on this side for a diverging lens, because here you have the second focus, here you have the second focus. Okay, so that is how for converging lens the focal length will be positive, and for diverging lens the focal length is going to be negative. Okay, the second consequence which we can draw from here is object distance is always negative, because always object will be kept on this side, object will be kept on this side. So second point is that object distance is always negative, will always be negative. The third point is that the distance of real image is positive and that of a virtual image is negative, because real image is always formed on right side of the lens. Okay, so distance to the real image will always be positive, and distance to the virtual images are formed on the left hand side of the lens, this side. Okay, this side is virtual images formed, this side is real image formed. So real image distance is always going to be positive and virtual image distance is always going to be negative. The next point is the object height h1 is always positive, because it will be kept upwards, perpendicular upwards. Height h2 of a virtual erect image will be positive. If the image formed is virtual and erect, the height will be positive, and that of a real inverted image will be negative. So height of virtual erect image will be positive and height of real inverted image will be negative. This is the fourth point. And fifth point is the linear magnification is positive for virtual image and negative for real image. So magnification is positive for virtual image and it is going to be negative for real image. This is point number 5. Okay, so these are the different consequences of the sign convention. So next we are going to see refraction at a convex spherical surface. So we are going to consider a convex spherical surface and we are going to find out a relation between distance of the object, distance of the image and radius of curvature of the convex spherical surface when the refraction is going to take place. So we are going to keep our object in an optically rarer medium and the image will be formed in an optically denser medium. Okay, and this image which is formed is going to be a real image. Okay, and we are going to derive a relation between object distance, image distance and radius of curvature of this spherical convex lens or spherical convex surface. Okay, not lens. So here we are going to do some assumption before starting this derivation. So let us see assumptions which are to be made. The first assumption we are going to use, okay, in the study of refraction at the spherical surface is that the object taken is a point object placed on the principal axis. So the first assumption we are going to make is that the object taken is a point object. We are considering that the object is very, very small, placed on principal axis. This is the first assumption. The second assumption is that the aperture of the spherical refracting surface is small. And the third assumption we are going to make over here is the incident and refracted rays make small angle with principal axis. Okay, so that the sine or tangent of the angles may be taken equal to the angles themselves. Okay, this point means that since the refracted and the incident ray are making very small angle with the principal axis, tan of theta or sine of theta, which we consider in this case, okay, can be approximated to theta itself. Okay, the value will be same as theta itself, since the angle made by the rays, okay, which are incident ray and refracted ray with the principal axis are very, very small. So this assumption is the third assumption. So now let us start with the derivation. So in this case, in this derivation, okay, we are going to consider a convex refracting surface, okay, which is going to separate a rarer medium of refractive index, let's assume as mu1, and a denser medium of refractive index mu2. So first, let me draw a convex refracting surface. Okay, so let us name this convex refracting surface A, let's say P, B. Let this be a convex refracting surface. Let me draw a principal axis over here. Okay, so this is going to separate the two mediums. So let us say on left hand side we have a rarer medium, okay, which is having a refractive index of mu1, okay, and on right hand side we have a denser medium which have a refractive index of mu2, and this is the interface APC, which is going to differentiate the two medias. Okay, let P be the principal, or let P be the pole over here. Okay, let us consider that P is the pole. C is the center of curvature, so let me mark a center of curvature. Let's say over here C is the center of curvature, and R is the radius of curvature. Okay, so distance PC is going to be the radius of curvature R. So let us mark that also. This distance from here to here till C is going to be the radius of curvature, which is R. Let us consider a point object O, which is placed on the principal axis in the rarer medium. So I will place my object over here. Let's say that the object is O. I have placed it on the principal axis in the rarer medium on this side. Starting from point object O, a ray ON is going to be incident on the refracting surface over here APB. So let me draw and ray ON, which is going to be my incident ray, which is going to make an angle of incidence at the surface. So let me draw a normal. So my normal is going to pass through the the center of curvature, that is nothing but it is going to be the radius, right? So any circle, if you have, you want to draw a normal at the surface of the circle, it is nothing but going to be the radius. Just extend the radius, you are going to get a normal. This is going to be exactly 90 degrees if you draw a tangent over here, because tangent and radius are always perpendicular to each other. Okay, so if I want to draw a normal at this point, what I have to do is just simply draw a radius. Just extend a radius, you get the normal at that point. So my O, let's say this point over here is N. So ON becomes my incident ray. So this is going to be my angle of incidence over here. Let's mark it as I. So refraction is going to happen because there is change in medium. It is going to bend. The refracted ray is going to bend towards the normal because the ray is passing from rarer medium to denser medium. So let us say that from N we have a refracted ray. Okay, and this is going to happen, the refraction is going to happen over here, and it is going to form an image on the principal axis. Okay, so this is your image form. So let us name it as Ni. Okay, let it be Ni. So Ni is going to be my refracted ray. Okay, and I is the image formed. Okay, so after refraction this ray has bent towards the normal because it has moved from rarer medium to denser medium. Okay, let us consider one more ray which is going straight along the principal axis normally. So this ray is going to go undeflected. So this point of intersection is going to give us the image formation. Okay, So image formation is going to happen at this point over here, which is the intersection of the two rays. So I is the point at which the image is formed. Okay, so the two refracted rays meet at point I where the image is formed. This image is going to be a real image, okay, of the point object O. This is your point object O over here. Now I'm going to make a small construction over here. What I'm going to do is drop a perpendicular from point N. So let us drop a perpendicular and name this point as N over here. So NM is going to be a perpendicular to the principal axis from point N. Okay, let us make this easy by naming the angles over here. So I'll name this angle as alpha because I'll be using these angles. I'll name this angle over here as beta, and I'll name this angle over here as gamma. So alpha, beta, gamma are the three angles I have named as shown in the figure. So let's start with the derivation now. So now I will consider triangle NOC. Okay, so if you consider triangle NOC, if you see, this is the triangle over here like this. This is O, this is N, this is C. The C angle is gamma. This angle over here is alpha. And if you extend this angle is my angle of incidence, that is I. So if you see this triangle, angle I becomes the exterior angle. So if we apply an exterior angle property over here, the exterior angle I is sum of the two angles leaving this angle which is next to the exterior angle. Okay, so that is going to be alpha plus gamma. Okay, since I is exterior angle, right, I can say I is equal to alpha plus gamma. Now I will consider the next triangle, that is NIC. So if you see the triangle NIC, this small triangle over here which is formed, okay, this angle gamma becomes the exterior angle. Over here I have angle of refraction, that is angle between normal and the refracted ray, and this is angle beta over here. So here also if I apply the exterior angle property, so in triangle NIC, if I apply the exterior angle property, I get gamma is equal to R plus beta. So from here R will be what? Angle of refraction will be what? It is going to be gamma minus beta. Okay, so now since we have assumed that the angles made by the incident ray and the refracted ray are very small with the principal axis, we can say that tan of the angle or sine of that angle is approximately equal to the angle itself. Okay, so since we have assumed that I, R, alpha, beta and gamma are small angles. Okay, no doubt we have written it in the assumption. I'm just specifying it over here. Small angles, I can say that tan of these angles, tan of theta is approximately equal to theta, or sine of theta is approximately equal to theta. Okay, so now in the next step, I'm going to find out tan of alpha, tan of beta and tan of gamma. So in the first step, what did we find out? We found out what is I in terms of alpha and gamma, and we found out R in terms of gamma and beta. In the next step, I'm going to write down the trigonometric ratios for tan of alpha, tan of gamma and tan of beta, and I will say that it is approximately equal to alpha, beta and gamma, and then make the substitution. So let's find out what is tan of alpha, tan of beta and tan of gamma. So I'm finding tan of alpha, tan of beta and tan of gamma, which will be same as alpha, beta and gamma based on the assumption that I have made. So if you see, tan of alpha is going to be opposite, that is NM, upon the adjacent side, that is OM, but OM can be approximated to OP because M and P is considered very much close to each other. So instead of OM, I can very well write OP. So this can be written as NM upon OP. Tan of beta is going to be opposite, that is NM, upon adjacent, here is going to be MI. But mi I can approximate again to mi, pi, because again p and m is considered very much closer. Okay, and tan of gamma, the ratio is going to be the opposite side, that is again nm, upon the adjacent side, that is mc, and mc can be approximated as pc, because again p and m is considered very close to each other. Okay, so these are the three ratios I get, that is tan of alpha, which is approximated as alpha, then for beta and for gamma respectively. Okay, all the three ratios. In the next step, I'm going to write down the Snell's law. For this particular process, I'm going to write down the Snell's law. So Snell's law is sine of I upon sine of R is equal to, before that let me just copy paste this down, because we are going to use it again. Okay. Alright, so I'll write down the Snell's law now. So from Snell's law of refraction, I can say that sine of I upon sine of R is equal to refractive index of the second medium, that is mu2, upon refractive index of the first medium, that is going to be mu1. So if I cross multiply, I'm going to get mu1 into sine of I is equal to mu2 into sine of R. Again the assumption, that is since I and R, that is angles over here, are very small, the assumption which we have made, sine of theta can be approximated as theta, so I can also write this as mu1 into I is equal to mu2 into R. Okay, but we have found out the I and R in terms of alpha and beta and gamma, so let's put it as that. So I is equal to alpha plus gamma, so let me put it over here. So instead of I'll put alpha plus gamma. In place of R, I've got it as gamma minus beta. So let us put it over here. This is going to be gamma minus beta. Okay, and also I have found out the values for alpha, beta and gamma. So let's substitute it over here now. So what I would get is mu1 into alpha is nm upon OP plus gamma is nm upon PC is equal to mu2 into gamma is nm upon PC minus beta is nm upon pi. So I make the substitution over here. Okay, so after this step, if you see nm is common over here, so I can easily cancel this nm out, because I can take it out common and cancel it on both the sides. So what will remain over here is mu1 into 1 upon OP plus 1 upon PC is equal to mu2 into 1 upon PC minus 1 upon Pi. So what I will do in the next step is I will take PC and PC on one side, the PC term on one side, I'll get this Pi on the other side. Okay, before that let's multiply mu1 also inside, mu2 also inside and rearrange the term. So what we are going to get over here is mu1 upon OP. This Pi I'll get on the other side multiplied with mu2, so it will become plus mu2 upon Pi is equal to this mu2 upon PC is already over here, okay, minus mu1 upon PC would come on the other side, okay, which would become mu1 or mu2 minus mu1 upon PC, common denominator. Okay, this is going to be mu1 upon OP plus mu2 upon PI. So let us use the new Cartesian sign convention over here. So let us write down the object distance, image distance and radius of curvature from here. So if you see in this figure, OP is nothing but the object distance. OP is nothing but the object distance, and it will be measured from the center, from the optical center, and we are going in the direction opposite to incident ray. So it is going to be negative u according to sign convention. We are going opposite to the incident ray. We have to start measuring the distance from the optical center. So you'll go from P. Rather, P is pole over here, but you will be going from P. Okay, so it is going to be minus u, negative. If you see PI is the image distance. Okay, and we are going in the direction of incident ray because we'll be starting from the optical center. So it is going to be positive V. And for the radius of curvature, that is PC, that is the radius of curvature. Okay, we are going in the direction of incident ray. So it is again going to be positive R. Let's make this substitution according to the sign convention. OP as minus U, PI as plus V and PC as R, and let us see what we get. Okay, so what we will get over here is this OP will become minus U. This is going to be mu1 upon minus U plus mu2 upon PI is plus V is equal to mu2 minus mu1 upon PC, where PC is nothing but positive R. So let's put this negative sign on the other side. So the final expression you are going to get over here is mu2 upon V minus mu1 upon U is equal to mu2 minus mu1 upon R. So this is the expression for refraction at a spherical surface, which gives you the relation between object distance, image distance and radius of curvature in terms of refractive indices mu1 and mu2. So this is for a convex refracting surface wherein your object was placed in a rarer medium and the image was formed in a denser medium. The things we can note over here is that if the rarer medium is air, that is the refractive index of the first medium wherein the object is placed is air, it is mu1 will be equal to 1, and let us say that the refractive index of the second medium, that is mu2, is equal to mu. How the equation is going to change? The equation will become mu upon V minus 1 upon U is equal to mu minus 1 upon R. This is going to be the expression for the rarer medium if it is air. The second point to note over here is that if the object is placed in a denser medium of refractive index mu2, then mu1 and mu2 is going to get interchanged over here in the same equation. Okay, so that the expression is going to become mu1 upon V minus mu2 upon U is equal to mu1 minus mu2 upon R. So if you see the equation, if you compare the two equations, only mu1 and mu2 will get interchanged over here. So this is the case, this is the first case, this is the second case when object is placed in denser medium and image is generated in a rarer medium. The image will be formed in a rarer medium. The only thing is going to happen is mu1 and mu2 will get interchanged. So it will become mu1 upon V minus mu2 upon U is equal to mu1 minus mu2 mu1 minus mu2 upon R. This is going to be the case. And the third point is that this formula are applicable to concave spherical surfaces as well. The same formula will be applicable for a concave spherical surface.